Now, when you're riding off-road, a puncture can happen at any time. The terrain is so changeable, you've got to look out for sharp rocks, stones, potholes, crocodile's teeth. There's plenty of things waiting there to deflate your day. Sometimes you can ride for 3,000 kilometers and not have a single puncture. Sometimes you get 3 in the same morning. Now, to repair a puncture, you're going to need to get the wheels out of the bike. So first up, let's get the front wheel out. Now, the front wheel can be removed using the tools that come in the bike's standard toolkit. You'll need the 6mm Allen key, the extension, the 24mm spanner, and the spindle adapter. First up, you need to loosen the pinch bolts on the bottom of the fork leg. The bolts don't need to come all the way out, but they do need to be loose. With both bolts loose, we can loosen the front wheel spindle itself. Place the spindle adapter in the end of the spindle, put your extension onto the spanner, and loosen the spindle. At this point, we only want the spindle just loose. We don't want to take it all the way out of the bike just yet. Now, you need to get the front wheel in the air. Now, there are 3 options to get the front wheel in the air. Option 1 is use a jack. Great in the workshop, but not the sort of thing you're going to carry on the trail. Although you might get lucky and find one you can borrow from a passing car. Option 2, you need a friend. If you caught one of your mates in, get them to sit on the back of the bike, and their weight will keep the front wheel in the air. Now, there's an important thing at this point. You need someone you can trust, because if they get off their bike, the whole thing's going to fall over. If you trust your friends, great. If you don't trust them, I recommend you tie their shoelaces onto the pillion pegs and they're going nowhere. Happy? If, like me, you've got no friends, you're going to have to improvise. The best thing to do out in the wild is to find rocks or logs and make yourself a support that'll fit underneath the sump guard. Okay, so with our beautiful jack set up, it's now time to remove the front wheel. So we keep rotating the wheel spindle until the front wheel comes free. Keep working the spindle with your right hand supporting the wheel, ready for when the spindle comes free. Slide the spindle out. You're going to want to put this down somewhere clean. I recommend putting it down on the standard toolkit. What we're looking to avoid is getting grit and dirt onto the grease on the spindle itself. With the wheel free, you can roll it forward, past the caliper, and voila! One front wheel, ready for tyre repair. With your puncture sorted, it's time to get the wheel back in the bike. First and most important, make sure the wheel spacers are firmly pressed in on both sides of the wheel. With the front wheel together, the spacers in place, we roll the wheel forwards and make sure the disc just slots between the pads. Try not to knock the wheel spacers out as you do so. Next up, have the spindle handy. Lift the wheel up. Slide the spindle all the way through and out the other side. When it gets to a stop, I'm going to rotate the spanner again to thread the spindle back into the fork leg. When you meet some resistance, we're going to rotate the spanner again to wind the spindle into the other fork leg. Keep going with this until it gets tight. Put the extender back on the end of the 24mm spanner, ensure the spindle is firmly tightened, give the front wheel a spin, and make sure the brakes function as they should. With the brake checked, you can use the 6mm Allen key to retighten the pinch bolts. Now, with the front wheel back in place, you're ready to go. Enjoy your ride. Just try to avoid those sharp stones. Now, let's have a look at removing the rear wheel. First tip, if you're going to have a puncture, break down somewhere pretty. Don't do it by the side of a busy road. Always get your mechanicals somewhere where it counts. Let's get this rear wheel out. We're going to need the 6mm Allen key to hold the axle, 24mm spanner and the extension to loosen the nut. With the nut loose, pop it down somewhere safe where it's not going to get kicked, knocked over or lost. Once the nut's out, we can draw the spindle out of the wheel. Always pop the wheel spindle down somewhere clean so it doesn't get covered in dust. With the spindle out, you can roll the wheel forward and remove the chain from the sprocket. With the spindle out and the chain off, you can roll the wheel backwards, taking care of the caliper and the rear sprocket carrier. Once the wheel is out, pop the sprocket off and your rear tyre is ready to be changed. So when your tyre is repaired, pop the sprocket back in, make sure it's pushed all the way home and that the spacer is flush. Next, position the wheel roughly and you need to get the caliper back on the swinging arm. At this point, have a quick check of the brake pads and make sure they're in the correct place inside the caliper, not hanging down. Roll the wheel slowly forward. We want to insert the disc in between the 2 rear brake pads. It helps at this stage to use a foot to lift the wheel. It takes a little bit of time this section, so take your time, be patient, and if it's not working, take the wheel back out and start again. Pop the chain back on the rear sprocket, then take the wheel spindle and slide that into the chain adjuster on this side. Make sure that the chain adjuster is seated all the way home in the swinging arm. Before you put the spindle all the way through, slide your second chain adjuster in and ensure it lines up and then you'll be able to roll the wheel back and push the spindle into place. Have a quick check of everything before we put the axle nut on. Both of the wheel spindle adjusters should be flush into the swinging arm. The disc should be between the pads and the chain should be on the sprockets. Next, washer, axle nut, use the Allen key to hold the spindle. Before we tighten, we're going to want to make sure the wheel is pushed all the way forward against the adjusters. Tighten the wheel up, grab hold of the extension. As always, before we put the bike back on the ground and ride away, we're going to check the wheel spins freely and that the back brake is effective at stopping the wheel. That's how to get the front and back wheels in and out of your Royal Enfield Himalayan. We're a little bit sweatier, a lot happier, and a whole lot greasier. I call that a win. Okay, back to the trails.